Well, I'm joined now on the programme by former Afghan President Hamid Karzai, who was leader of the country from 2001 to 2014. Thank you very much, President Karzai, for joining me on the programme. These are incredibly difficult days in Afghanistan. Just tell me how you are.
Well, I'm good, and I very much hope that the country will be better.
The Americans have been in Afghanistan for 20 years, and after all this time, why aren't Afghan forces better prepared to shoulder responsibility on their own?
The Afghan forces are better prepared to shoulder the responsibilities of protecting the country on their own. The country is as well. But the environment, the overall regional environment, and the continuation of interference and undermining of the Afghan state is continuing. That is something that we, the Afghan people, need to handle, and handle sooner.
And do you think that the Afghan state is in a position to rise to this challenge?
By all means, ma'am. After 2001, when the international community arrived in here, in the aftermath of the tragedy of September 11, the Afghan people and the international community joined hands. The Afghans for their own reasons, the international community, the Americans for their own reasons. The Afghan reasons were freeing the country from a creeping invasion and from extremism, in which the Afghans were dying and the country was getting a bad name. The international community's objective, led by the United States, was to, as they said, free Afghanistan and themselves from extremism and terrorism. We, the Afghan people, did our job. We rallied together, we freed the country. The creeping invasion that was coming to us from a neighbor was defeated. We began rebuilding the Afghan state, and the world saw how the Afghan people got together to do that, to bring back a constitution, to reopen schools, to bring back Afghan women to the social and economic and political life of the country, and to raise our flag around the world, plus much more. Now, the United States and its allies, for a number of years, did very well too. But subsequently, they began to, rather than going and drawing the sanctuaries outside of Afghanistan, in Pakistan, which is what they themselves reported about, they began bombing and hurting Afghan people and creating prisons in our own country. That led to where we are today, in short.
Well, how would you then sum up the presence of the United States and the West in Afghanistan in the last 20 years?
I would categorize them in two ways. Compartment one, the support of the United States and its allies and the rest of the international community in rebuilding Afghanistan, its infrastructure, helping in education, helping in lots of other areas, was welcome, and it did produce immensely good results for Afghanistan and its people. And we are grateful for that, for all those countries that helped us. The other compartment, the military compartment that was intended to fight extremism and terrorism, that rather than doing the job correctly and where it was needed, began to hurt and harass and bomb and imprison Afghans. That's where it failed. And that's where our failure today is.
So would you say then that the entire mission has failed?
The entire mission with regard to the stated objective of the United States and its NATO allies in defeating terrorism and extremism has failed. Because, let me repeat myself, they did not do what they should have done. They did what they should have not done, as I described earlier. But the other compartment of helping Afghanistan in civilian areas, in education, in rebuilding and reconstruction. That was successful. And you can see it clearly when you visit Afghanistan that there is something to show to the world.
And no doubt Afghanistan,
all those countries and their people.
No doubt Afghanistan has come a long way, and it is not the country that was invaded by the US in 2001, and before that we saw what the Taliban turned the nation into. However, there are many critics now who do say Afghanistan today is a failed state.
Afghanistan today is not a failed state. As far as the Afghan people are concerned, they created a constitution, they went to the elections, they embraced democracy wholeheartedly. They went to school, they educated themselves. We have millions of Afghan boys and girls educated today. We did all that we could to put Afghanistan on the right track and to represent it well on the international scene. The failure of the state that one would describe, especially in the Western press, is exactly where the authority and the responsibility was more with the United States and its NATO allies. That's where things have failed. And that's where we, the Afghan people, are also paying a price, a very heavy price.
Well, outgoing American General Scott Miller has warned of a full-scale civil war. How concerned are you about this?
Well, he's very wrong. He shouldn't be saying that. Afghanistan, exactly for this reason I'm telling you that has failed. Instead of saying that they have helped Afghanistan stabilize, they leave. In the general leaving is warning of a civil war. So that means they have failed. But we Afghans have not. We will not fail. We will continue to rebuild our country, and we will do all we can to talk to our countrymen, the Taliban, and bring Afghanistan to peace, and hopefully this with the help of the region, and also very much hopefully with the help of the United States and their Western allies.
Well, today we're seeing district after district fall to the Taliban. I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, it is sad. I call on the Taliban not to fight. And I call on the Afghan government to do all it can to work for peace. So I call on both sides, on the Taliban, that taking districts is not going to help them in the long term. And I call on the Afghan government, delaying going into serious peace talks will not help the country either. So both sides must sit down and talk as soon as possible for peace. This country belongs to all of us. This is not a country of us alone or the Taliban alone. We all belong to this country, and it is upon us, the Afghan people, to rebuild it. And that can only be done when we make peace. And peace is possible.
But as long as...
And to recognize that all that's happening, I want to say this, and I want to say this, and to recognize that all that's happening here in terms of fighting is in the interest of outsiders and against and at the peril of the Afghan people.
As long as the Taliban are winning on the battlefield, do you really think that a deal is possible? I mean, they feel quite emboldened right now.
A deal is possible anytime. A deal is possible right now. Winning on the battlefield does not mean winning the country or building the country. And that will not be a win, because the Afghan people want a country that belongs to all, that is moving forward, that is represented in the world, that is recognized by the world, and where the Afghan people are seen, all of them, to have accepted a government, and that the will of the Afghan people is expressed in the creation of a government. Taking the country by the force of the gun will not help anyone, as it has not helped in the past.